In a time of immense fear and oppression, a Hebrew baby was born under the shadow of Pharaoh's cruel decree, a decree designed to extinguish hope itself. The land of Egypt, once a sanctuary, had become a place of terror for the Hebrew people. The decree was clear and merciless. Every newborn Hebrew boy must be thrown into the Nile River, a watery grave for the future generation. Pharaoh's command echoed through the land, a constant reminder of the Hebrews' vulnerability. The Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt, was now to become a symbol of death and despair. But one mother, Jochebed, a woman of unwavering faith and courage, refused to surrender her child to this horrific fate. She hid her son for 3 months, shielding him from the prying eyes of the Egyptian authorities, her heart pounding with every passing day. Jochebed's actions were a direct defiance of the king's order, a dangerous act of rebellion against the most powerful man in Egypt. She risked everything to protect her child, fueled by a mother's love and an unyielding belief in a higher power. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, she knew that she could hide him no longer. The baby's cries grew louder, threatening to expose their secret and bring down the wrath of Pharaoh upon their home. Driven by desperation and guided by divine inspiration, she crafted a basket from reeds, carefully weaving it together with her own hands. She then coated it with tar and pitch for waterproofing, transforming it into a vessel of hope amidst a sea of despair. With a heavy heart and tear-filled eyes, she placed her precious baby in the basket and gently set it afloat among the tall grasses on the banks of the Nile River, entrusting him to the currents and the will of God. His sister Miriam, a young girl with a brave heart, watched from a distance, her eyes fixed on the floating basket, guarding her brother's fate with unwavering loyalty and a silent prayer on her lips. As fate would have it, the basket drifted to a place where Pharaoh's daughter, a princess known for her kindness and compassion, was bathing in the river. Drawn by the sound of a baby's cry, she discovered the basket hidden among the reeds. Overcome with compassion at the sight of the helpless infant, she chose to defy her own father's decree and save him from certain death. With remarkable courage, Miriam approached the princess and offered to find a Hebrew nurse to care for the child. Unbeknownst to the princess, she was offering her own mother. And so, in a twist of fate, the baby was returned to his mother for a time, allowing Jochebed to nurture and care for her son under the very roof of the palace. He was safe, at least for now, under the umbrella of royal protection, shielded from the dangers that lurked outside the palace walls. Recognizing the extraordinary circumstances of his rescue, Pharaoh's daughter named him Moses, a name that echoed his miraculous deliverance, drawn out of the water. Against all odds, a child marked for death, a symbol of Hebrew oppression, was adopted into the heart of the Egyptian royal family, his destiny forever intertwined with the fate of 2 nations. Even in the darkest of times, when hope seemed lost and despair reigned supreme, a flicker of light found a way to break through, illuminating a path towards a brighter future. This single act of courage, compassion, and defiance would ripple through the ages, changing the course of history and shaping the destiny of generations to come. The very river that was meant for destruction, the symbol of Pharaoh's cruelty, became a path to destiny, a conduit for hope, and the birthplace of a legend. And so the extraordinary story of Moses, the child of destiny, had begun, a story that would inspire and captivate the world for millennia. Moses, a child of Hebrew slaves, found himself in an extraordinary position. Through a twist of fate, he grew up within the opulent walls of Pharaoh's palace, a world away from his true origins. He lived as an Egyptian prince, enjoying all the privileges and comforts afforded to royalty. He was raised alongside the Pharaoh's own children, immersed in the culture and customs of the Egyptian court. He was educated in the wisdom of Egypt, learning from the most esteemed scholars and scribes. He studied mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and the intricate art of hieroglyphic writing. He was surrounded by luxury and power, witnessing firsthand the grandeur and authority of the Egyptian empire. He dined at lavish banquets, wore the finest garments, and commanded the respect of servants and officials. Yet, his earliest years with his mother, spent in secret, planted seeds of a different identity, a connection to a heritage he could never fully escape. These memories, though suppressed, lingered in his heart. He learned the customs of the court, mastering the intricate protocols and traditions that governed Egyptian society. He learned the language of rulers, the art of diplomacy, and the subtle nuances of power. He was also trained in the ways of war, becoming a skilled warrior and strategist, prepared to defend Egypt's borders and expand its influence. To all, he was a prince, a respected member of the royal family, grandson to the very pharaoh who had ordered his death, a secret carefully guarded by those who knew the truth. But beneath the fine linen and gold, the symbols of his adopted status, Moses carried a hidden legacy, a connection to the Hebrew people and their suffering. He was both Egyptian, raised in its splendor and power, and Hebrew, bound by blood and a shared history of oppression. He was a man of two worlds, torn between loyalty to the pharaoh and compassion for his enslaved brethren. His sense of justice and compassion set him apart, making him question the established order and the treatment of the Hebrew slaves. The palace, with all its grandeur, could not erase the truth of his origins, the cries of his people echoing in his heart. Moses was respected, powerful, and intelligent, a figure of influence within the Egyptian court. But a deeper calling stirred within him, a sense of purpose that transcended the privileges of his royal life. He lived a life of privilege, surrounded by opulence and ease, yet something was missing, a void that could not be filled by power or possessions. The boy drawn from the water, once an infant hidden among the reeds, was becoming a man, grappling with his identity and his place in the world. And destiny was waiting, patiently observing as Moses navigated the complexities of his dual existence. The time would come, as it always does, when he could no longer ignore who he truly was, when the weight of his heritage would become too heavy to bear in silence. The journey from prince to liberator, from adopted son to leader of his people was about to begin, a path fraught with peril and sacrifice. As a man, Moses enjoyed the luxuries of the palace, but his heart was restless. He couldn't ignore the world beyond the gilded walls, a world teeming with suffering and injustice. He looked beyond the palace and saw the suffering of the Hebrew slaves, their backs bent under the weight of their burdens. He witnessed their harsh labor, the endless days spent toiling under the scorching sun, building monuments to a kingdom that enslaved them. He saw the cruelty of their taskmasters, the whips cracking against their weary bodies, the relentless oppression that ground them down. A sense of injustice burned within him, a fire ignited by the sight of such blatant inhumanity. He could no longer stand idly by. One day he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. The man's face contorted with rage as he lashed out with brutal force. And in a moment of anger fueled by years of suppressed outrage, he killed the Egyptian, silencing the oppressor's hand. He hid the body, desperately trying to conceal his act, hoping to bury the evidence of his transgression. But his act was soon discovered, the secret unearthed, and the consequences began to unfold. The Hebrews questioned his authority, his right to intervene, his place among them. They saw him as an Egyptian, not as one of their own. And Moses realized he belonged to neither world, neither fully Egyptian nor fully Hebrew, a man caught between two identities. Fearing for his life, knowing that Pharaoh's wrath would be swift and merciless, he fled Egypt, seeking refuge from the storm he had unleashed. Leaving behind privilege and power, the opulent life he had always known, he traded his royal garments for the simple clothes of a fugitive. Alone in the desert, stripped of his former status, he became a fugitive, haunted by his actions, the weight of his deed pressing down on him with each step. The prince was gone, shed like an old skin. A new chapter was beginning, a blank page waiting to be filled with an unknown destiny. Moses wandered into the wilderness, a vast and unforgiving landscape, searching for purpose, for meaning in the aftermath of his actions, for a path forward in the desolate expanse. He left behind everything he knew, the familiar comforts of his past life, but the journey was not the end. It was a beginning, a chance to forge a new identity, to find redemption in the wilderness. In the silence of exile, far from the noise and distractions of the palace, he would find his true calling, a destiny far greater than he could have ever imagined. The man who ran from his past, from the consequences of his actions, was running toward his destiny, a future that would reshape not only his life, but the fate of an entire people. Sometimes it takes losing everything, surrendering all that you hold dear to discover who you are meant to be, to uncover the purpose that lies hidden within your soul. Moses' transformation had begun, a metamorphosis from prince to prophet, from fugitive to leader. The desert would shape him into a leader, forging his character in the crucible of hardship, preparing him for the monumental task that lay ahead. The story was far from over. It was only just beginning, the first chapter in an epic tale of faith, courage, and liberation. In Midian, Moses found a new life as a shepherd, marrying Zipporah and serving her father, Jethro. For 40 years he lived quietly, far from Egypt. One day while tending sheep near Mount Horeb, he saw a bush ablaze but not consumed. Drawn by curiosity, Moses approached, and heard a voice call his name. God spoke from the flames, "Take off your sandals, for you stand on holy ground." Moses hid his face in awe and fear. God revealed himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The quiet shepherd was now in the presence of the divine. God declared he had seen the suffering of his people in Egypt. Moses was chosen for a mission to lead the Israelites out of bondage. The years of exile had prepared him for this moment. The burning bush was a turning point. Moses' true purpose was revealed. The time for action had come. The shepherd would become a deliverer. Destiny called from the flames. Moses listened. God told Moses, "I have seen my people's misery, I will deliver them." Moses was stunned. How could he face Pharaoh? God promised, "I will be with you." Moses asked for God's name and received the answer, "I am who I am." God gave Moses miraculous signs, a staff turning to a snake, a healed hand, water turned to blood. Still, Moses doubted his ability to speak. God appointed Aaron, his brother, as spokesman. With no excuses left, Moses accepted the mission. He took his staff and set out for Egypt. The humble shepherd was now God's chosen messenger. The fate of a nation rested on his obedience. Moses' journey back to Egypt was a journey of faith. The time for deliverance had come. The Exodus would begin with a single step. Moses was ready. Moses and Aaron confronted Pharaoh. "Let my people go." Pharaoh refused, and Egypt was struck by 10 plagues. The Nile turned to blood, fish died, and water became undrinkable. Frogs, gnats, and flies swarmed the land. Livestock died. Boils afflicted the people, and hail destroyed crops. Locusts devoured what remained, and darkness covered Egypt for 3 days. Each plague challenged Egypt's gods and Pharaoh's pride. Still, Pharaoh's heart was hardened. Finally, God announced the last plague, the death of every Egyptian firstborn. At midnight, a great cry rose in Egypt as every firstborn died. Pharaoh's resistance was broken, the power of Egypt was shattered, the Hebrews' God had triumphed, freedom was within reach. God instructed the Israelites to mark their doors with lamb's blood, the first Passover. The angel of death passed over their homes, sparing their firstborn. Egypt mourned, and Pharaoh finally relented. "Go, worship your God," he commanded. The Egyptians urged the Israelites to leave, giving them silver, gold, and clothing. After 430 years, the Hebrews marched out of Egypt, free at last. 600,000 men plus women and children began the journey. They left with Egypt's wealth, no longer slaves but a nation. God led them by a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. The Exodus had begun, a people set free by miracles. They did not take the shortest route but followed God's guidance. The wilderness awaited, but so did the promise. The journey to a new land had started. The Israelites moved forward, trusting in God's presence. Their story of freedom was just beginning. Pharaoh changed his mind and pursued the Israelites with his army. Trapped between the Red Sea and Egyptian chariots, the people panicked. Moses declared, "Stand firm, the Lord will fight for you." God's pillar of cloud moved between the Israelites and Egyptians. Moses stretched out his hand and the sea parted. The Israelites crossed on dry ground, walls of water on either side. The Egyptians followed, but God threw them into confusion. Moses stretched out his hand again, and the sea returned, drowning Pharaoh's army. Not one Egyptian survived. The Israelites were truly free. The impossible had happened. God's power was undeniable. The people stood in awe, saved by a miracle. Their journey continued, but slavery was behind them. The sea had become their path to freedom. In the desert, the Israelites faced hunger and thirst, but God provided manna and water. After 3 months, they reached Mount Sinai. God descended on the mountain in fire and thunder. Moses climbed into the cloud to meet God. There he received the 10 Commandments, laws for a new nation. The first 4 commanded devotion to God alone. The remaining 6 governed how they treated each other. Honor parents, do not murder, steal, lie, or covet. These commandments form the foundation of their society. Moses brought down the tablets carrying not just laws, but a covenant. The Israelites were now a people set apart, guided by divine instruction. Their freedom came with responsibility. The journey from slavery to nationhood was complete. The legacy of Moses and his people would endure for generations.